Well, Lionel, I see you want to be killed.
But there's Stanley Whiplash, and there was Dudley Do Right. Remember him?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, Inspector Fenwick.
Yeah. So that was my biggest one, but I loved all of them. Anything that started out with da 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 da. If I heard that in the house, I'm running to the TV.
Please put your hands together for the legendary Larry Kenny. Can I get a thunder?
Thunder!
Another thunder!
Thunder!
Thundercats!
Oh! Please.
Hi, everybody.
If you insist.
We actually have someone in the audience singing, which is awesome.
Yes. We got a squeaky Lionel over there, too.
Yep.
Love it.
But the Lord of Thundera has to stop squeaking for a little bit, okay? Because we have the actual Lord of the Thundercats up here. So, Caitlin, you might know.
I know everything.
You know everything about Doctor Who, I understand. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, you are very well known as the voice of Minnie Mouse.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Everyone wide awake? No, me neither.
And actually, you have a connection to Larry over there because you were in Thundercats Roar.
Yes. We had a reboot of Thundercats 2020, I believe.
Something like that.
And they rebooted Thundercats in the style like Teen Titans Go. So we had a lot of zippy, zany adventures. And my brother watched Thundercats growing up. I wasn't allowed to because it was a boys' show. So I got My Little Pony, which is also pretty tight. So Thundercats Roar was a lot of fun. And it was an ensemble record, which we don't often get to do. And Larry popped in. You did a couple things on there.
Yeah, on Roar.
Yeah,
Roar.
Jaga?
Yeah. I think I played Jaga.
Yeah, Jaga, and then original Lionel meeting Thundercats Roar version of Lionel. So it was pretty fun. I love that show. I had so much fun on it.
And one more thing I want to mention, because I'm a huge Transformers fan. You were in Transformers Earthspark?
Yeah, I was Cadet Rosato, and there was one character. She would trick robots. It was like, I hate to say it was like robot trafficking. Like she would trick them to come to an arena to fight each other, and viewers would put bets on them. So our lead kids and their Transformers were tricked by them. And she was from Philadelphia, so I hoped I got it right.
Well, and it sounds like someone in Philadelphia would do. So trust me. I've lived in Philadelphia for quite some time, so I have some
expertise. It's
expertise.
organic that you say that.
So Keith.
Hello. Morning.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. So you were in a little thing called Overwatch.
Yes.
Any Overwatch?
Any Overwatch fans in the house today? Nice. Yes, I voiced Diva, of course. No, I didn't voice Diva whatsoever. Torbjorn, ready to work. Come get your armor.
Plus, I don't want to go through your entire IMDb because it would
why would you do that? Don't do that.
It would take, well, then we'd be done. Genshin Impact, Solar Opposites, and of course, what I need to mention, Transformers War for Cybertron.
Yes. I was Jetfire in that, which is actually what was my favorite Transformer. I had a couple of video games where I was Rumble and I was Frenzy and I played Blast Off, but then when it came to the Netflix series, I got to play Jetfire, which was super fun. He was something around, you don't have to like me, but you have to believe me. Somewhere in that vibe. It's been a minute.
Yeah. But you're in good company. Greg Berger was the original Skyfire when they couldn't call him Jetfire.
Right.
But
I worked with Greg Berger in one of the first gigs that I ever did. That was very cool. I remember that. That was awesome.
And of course, we cannot ignore the very first Lion-O, Larry, who I think you've been in every single Thundercats animated series. Is that correct, Larry?
What's that?
You've been in all the animated because you were in the first,
yeah.
And then you were in the Thundercats as Lion-O's dad.
Claudius, that's right.
Yeah, the reboot.
And then you were in
Jugger.
Roar. So
Yeah.
you're like all over the place. You are the Thundercat. The Thundercat.
The Lord of the Thundercats.
Absolutely. And of course, can't forget Silverhawks.
Bluegrass. Remember old Bluegrass?
And
Guitars. Watch this, kid.
and you did some work for Red Dead Online.
Yes. Red Dead Redemption, is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah. I played. Anybody play Red Dead Redemption 2? I played J.D. Cripps. You know the old codger that's. Thief is what he is, farts and hates everybody. He had lines like, well, now she claimed to be royalty, but she had a head the size of a pumpkin. I don't write them, I just read them.
Love it.
Yeah, and I also see you've done recently some work with Teen Titans Go.
Yeah, I'm doing Teen Titans Go right now. I play the chief. Is the old guy. I play only old guys. I don't know why. He's in a wheelchair, and he's a curmudgeon too. He's and get out of the way, punk. Yeah, and I'm also doing. I'm on Pokemon Horizons now. Anybody watch Pokemon Horizons?
Ooh, nice.
Ludlow is my character. The little guy with the white hair and the big mustache and everything. Yeah. So I'm still busy.
That is awesome. Now, first of all, before we go too much further, are you having a good time here at Terrificon?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's terrific.
It's in the name.
Someone had to say it, right?
You legally have to say it.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Meeting all kinds of great people. Generally excited to meet you. I mean, how could you complain about that? It's pretty fantastic.
And thank you all for coming so early.
Yeah, thanks for getting up early.
Yeah.
My
Is that
brain is
it? Are
still
we
on
You guys for getting up
California
early.
time.
That's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going
Thank
to say,
you for
who's
coming.
hungover? Anybody? Just
Did you go with Ving Ming's pub
okay.
crawl?
Yeah, they were probably wise to not do that. So the characters you guys have played have had quite an impact on people. When you were younger, who were the characters that had impacts on you?
My go-to, we had a very heavy animation upbringing, so we watched anything we could get our hands on. So, things will imprint on you that you don't understand quite yet until you're older. But Bea Benaderet was a big influence on me, even if I didn't know who she was. She was one of the women of Looney Tunes, even before June Foray joined the mix. She was the original Witch Hazel, the original Granny. She was Mama Bear. She did so many of those roles. So that's a lot of what inspires me. And then the ones I really latched onto cognitively was the Animaniacs, because the first run of that, so Rob, Jess, Tress, Mo, all of them were huge impacts for me.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Keith?
Yeah, I've always loved animation. I didn't know where it was all coming from when I was a kid, but I loved it all. I found my way to a lot of anime, like Kimba the White Lion and Speed Racer, Marine Boy when I was really, really, really young. Things like Thundercats, huge impression on me. Thundar the Barbarian. I'm trying to think of all these action, Dungeons and Dragons, the animated series. There were so many. And then films like, I loved Ralph Bakshi stuff. I loved Watership Down. There was a lot of animation in different styles that
How old were
affected
you when you
me.
saw Watership Down?
I was young. I was born in 1970. So Looney Tunes was a big deal. I loved Looney Tunes. I loved the original Scooby-Doo's when they had a laugh track. Those are my favorites. I love the idea of a studio audience laughing as they perform live in front of them. But yeah, all those had a huge impact, and I definitely, ran around my neighborhood with friends pretending to be all these characters back in the day. I even, when I was maybe 10, 14 years old, somewhere in that vein, my buddy and I, our favorite thing to do, and I had no idea, mind you, what I was going to do career-wise, was to put a movie on, turn the volume down, just choose characters, act the entire thing out while we were recording it, and then we could forever play that back and laugh. Especially if we hadn't seen the movie. We loved the idea that we weren't quite sure what was going to happen, and that made for a lot of, kind of fumbles and mistakes as I thought I was leaving, but really I was opening the closet. Like, I'm out, I'm leaving. I never want to see you again. Never mind, that's the closet. Like, those kind of things that organically happen were great, and we loved it. And of course, I should have known what I would end up doing, but I had no idea for another decade, so.
So Larry,
Yeah.
When you were younger, who were your inspirations, your idols, your characters you loved?
Well, when I was younger, and we're going back a ways now, a lot further than you guys, everything was in black and white. Not just on TV, the whole world was black and white. But when I was a kid, I loved. I think every kid loves cartoons, not just those of us who are lucky enough to get involved in it later. But I always liked Rocky and Bullwinkle. You guys remember Rocky and Bullwinkle? Yeah. And so many great characters on that. Snidely Whiplash, you remember him?
I do.
I'm going to get you, Nell, and tie you to the railroad track.
Dudley.
In fact, I kind of stole that voice for
He's
Jackalman
famous.
on Thundercats. You remember Jackalman?
I do. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I kind of channeled him when I was doing that. 'Cause it sounds pretty much.
Well, Lionel, I see you want to be killed.
But there's Snidely Whiplash, and there was Dudley Do Right. Remember him?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Inspector Fenwick.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest one, but I loved all of them. Anything that started out with da 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 da. You know, if I heard that in the house, I'm running to the TV. But I think we all like cartoons. I don't have any one particular one that I, try to model myself after or anything. But I like animation.
Yeah, but it influences.
Yeah.
If it makes you feel better, I watched some stuff in black and white too.
Did you?
Definitely. Well, I definitely watched the Fractured Fairy Tales and Tom Slick.
Yeah.
Some of those were black and white, and some of them were not. Same with the Rocky and Bullwinkle. I do remember watching that too.
Let's turn back the
Turn
back the Wayback Machine till 1940, Sherman. Remember that?
Yes, Sherman and Peabody. Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Peabody.
Where are we
Yeah.
going today, Mr. Peabody?
Oh, you, Mr. Peabody.
Yes.
I also watched a lot of stuff in black and white. Of course, my TV was black and white, so I really
So you
didn't
didn't
have
know.
a choice.
Yeah,
So.
you had no idea. You watched Lost in black and white. You didn't
Exactly.
realize that was another way to watch it.
When I was really little, I knew what my world was like in San Diego in the 80s. But for some reason, I truly believed that, back in the 20s in Kansas, everything was sepia toned because of Wizard of Oz. And
Yeah,
I
of course.
I never questioned it. It never occurred to me that was a film style to show off Technicolor, 20 minutes into the film. I
Right.
just thought like, ew, Kansas.
Yeah,
It was
what's
all
going on?
one color. Well, I'm so glad they got to Oz.
Yeah, it's
And
a
then
good thing.
she went home. There's no more color.
What a letdown that
But,
is.
if you're 3, that's kind of the story you're telling your head. Because I needed my parents to tell me, like, no, the world was still in color.
Mhm.
This was a thematic choice.
I
What's
love
a thematic choice?
that's a lot at that age to understand, to comprehend, for sure.
Unless someone told me something as a fact, I would just make up my own opinion, and that was the fact.
Right.
So,
Well, from what
endearing when you're 3, not when you're 33.
What I understand, there are some parts of Kansas that do look like that. So
Probably.
it's all fine.
It's at twilight. It's just at that right time of day. You get that perfect sepia tone.
So I could do this all
It
day.
looks like
I'm
you-
not wearing my
put
Captain
too many
America
eye
shirt.
drops in that day.
There is a microphone
Yellow
over
eye
here. If you have questions, please go ahead, get in line. And while people are getting in line,
Professor Rockbottom.
I have a quick question for all you guys.
Yeah.
Because most voice actors are asked, how do I get into voice acting? And most of them say, you need to study acting first. You need to get into acting first. What are some of the early acting roles that you guys had that got you prepared for voice acting?
Prepared for animation? Is that what you said?
It could be live action, animation, whatever type of performing you did to kind of prepare you for voice acting.
I mean, I did stage performances throughout school, high school, and some that was outside of school. I studied at the South Coast Repertory. I grew up in Orange County in California. So, I mean, I think everything set me that way, but also just goofing around. I mean, again, like I talked about, like dubbing things for fun, like that was an afternoon for us. But we also would just set the tape recorder going and just create stories. And you had to play various characters. We weren't doing it nobody heard those but us. So we weren't trying to entertain anyone else. We weren't performing for people. It was just for ourselves. So there was no judgment. We just create a different voice and just roll with it. Didn't matter if the story was no good. We'd break out a little Casio so we had some music to set the tone if we were doing a horror story or what we were doing. So all of that stuff set me on the right path for that stuff.
A theremin.
I really wish I'd hung out with you when I was, if I lived in your area, that would have been fun.
It was I'm sure it was considered weird. I don't think anybody knew we were doing it, but we, somewhere I've got these cassettes. They're probably not interesting at all, but they're in my cellar somewhere, I'm sure.
Well, I got my start.
My cellar.
I got my
I have a cellar.
I'm sorry. I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead.
Now we're finished. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
I'm just ribbing.
I got my start in radio when I was 13 years old. No, 15. I'm sorry. Wow. 15. In 1963. Yeah, I've been doing this for 62 years now. And usually people go, oh, my God. Really? Let's hear it. Oh, my God. Yeah, really. That's it. Anyway, so for me, that was a way to get into this business. I didn't come in through the acting door. You know, I didn't do any plays in high school. Did a couple in college, but I never did any Broadway or anything like that. But I started out in radio, and the thing is, if it was for me, I had always done crazy voices. My mother used to tell me that basically from the time I could talk, I was mimicking voices on TV. You know, Mickey Mouse and things. I can't do Mickey Mouse anymore. My voice is too deep. I can't try to. Hello. See, that's about it. and many forget it. There's no way I could come close to that. But so I started in the radio, and I had, like I said, I had always been known amongst my friends and everything to be the guy that does crazy, silly voices and cartoon type voices. So when I got started in the radio, I was a disc jockey. That's not a DJ. Not today's DJs. Disc jockeys, we were on the radio playing the records. And we never went, you know what that's all about. But so I had always done crazy voices. And when I started in the radio, I would play a record and then maybe do some kind of cartoon voice as a little joke or a character voice or something like that. And I kept doing that. And then as I moved across the country to bigger and bigger radio stations, I got more opportunities to do commercials for the local towns. And then finally when I got to New York, which is where New York and LA is where most of the production is done, then I had a chance to start doing commercials. And I did, back in the 70s and 80s, I was all over the place. You couldn't get away from me. And the first animation I ever did actually was commercials. For 40 years, I was the voice of Count Chocula. That's right, frightfully delicious, isn't it? With chocolatey marshmallows in every bite. Remember that one? And I also, for 40 years, was the voice of Sonny, the Cocoa Puffs person.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Up here, I will go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Yahoo! I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Thank you. So that was when I started in animation, and then of course it led to cartoon shows, and animated series and stuff like that, and now video games. So all those teachers, if any of my teachers are here, no, they're long dead. Who used to tell me, and there were some who would say to me, Larry, you're a great kid, and you're very smart and everything, but you've got to knock off all these jokes and funny voices all the time. You'll get nowhere in life doing that. Well, I did.
I did stage training. I think that's the strongest element for voiceover, in my opinion. Just because I thought you had to be on Broadway to do voiceover, because all the big stars of the Disney films were Broadway actors. Because if you're in the very back row of a theater, you can't really see anything. They're kind of just blobs of color. So the voice has to deliver the whole way. And I was also someone who, I watch the show and I mimic it back. And I got bullied a lot in elementary school. So my way of fighting back would be I would just kind of mock them in their own voice, or any affectation they'd have, or talk like them. And then they were so offended that I would make fun of them that way. And you made fun of me. So I would, what got me in detention then now pays the rent. So, and they all probably peeped. So who really won? But definitely things like Chicken Run. I loved Chicken Run when that first came out. So I would just do all the voices for that, because there was 3 different accents in there. Or watch what I love about the old Looney Tunes was Mel Blanc would just scream half the time. He would just have that loud, abrasive scream because they filmed in the big auditoriums. So to get across it on the microphone, he had to scream. But we don't get to scream like that anymore. That desperate kind. But definitely stage training is the strongest one for me because you learn how to listen. You learn how to react. You learn how to direct your voice towards a person versus like the audience versus the stage itself. And just all those little things that contribute to it. And it helps you break out of any monotonic sound you might fall into, which is normal, but like I'll listen back to stuff I do and like, oh, it's so boring and straight-laced, but it's natural. But I never spoke naturally. It was always some kind of heightened way of speaking. So pros and cons for both.
Awesome. And you learned how to go from the diaphragm so
Yes,
you can
yes.
project.
Because I took opera training in college for a semester or a quarter. It's like a little 6 or 8 week one, just to learn the basics of how to sing operatically in your head, using your diaphragm, no squeezing your throat. I wanted to learn those mechanics to better help singing or better help vocal heights I could reach. And then when 102 was like, okay, now we're going to get into like practice singing. I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't actually want to do opera. I just want to be capable of it. Because the most opera I had was Phantom of the Opera. And
Well, that musical.
it's the best musical ever, yes.
That's interesting.
I'm a big fan of the Phantom. So we do have a question over here. Your name, where you're from.
Ara.
Ara.
I'm from Queens. Queens, New York.
Yay, Queens.
Yeah, please.
Brooklyn. No, that's Captain America. Sorry. And what is your question?
So my question is that, nowadays, like, voice acting, like, back in the days, people would, like, come together to do some voice acting in one big studio, but then nowadays you're, like, either working remotely or coming one by one in the studios. I'm not sure if any other of you guys have experiences working in a studio in other voice actors in one studio, and would you, like, prefer, like, in person, or would you prefer like doing remotely, or having one voice actor do their line, then another voice actor go next, and stuff like that? And like how there's like there's like voice acting, like AIs might be taking over through voice acting, and I was wondering what are your guys' thoughts about it? And since there was recently a voice acting strike, especially in Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact, they had a voice acting strike, which they fired 2 of the voice actors, the voice of Kaching, which is Kayla Mills, and the voice of Paimon, and now Paimon recently got a new voice actor.
There's definitely been a lot of changes, especially over this last year. In my opinion, ensemble record is the best because you bounce off each other. It's that camaraderie, and you can read the room, you can read the intention of the actor before you, so you can give the best performance. And Thundercats Roar was an ensemble record. And we would do 2 runs of each scene, and that's all we needed because we knew exactly what to do once we had our other players in our ear. The trick about ensemble these days is, depending how big your cast is, can every one of those cast members be available every week on the same day at the same time? That's kind of the stickiness of it, depending where they live. Is someone remote? Does someone have kids they have to pick up after school? Does someone have a family member they're caring for? That's where it kind of gets sticky. So one at a time, even though it might be more expensive, it's more easy for everyone to accommodate around. And it's more work for a studio, and who doesn't want to pay the rent? So I definitely see... And there's pros for all of it. Like if it's remote and I have a 15-minute, I'd like to stay at home rather than drive 2 hours to LA. But I do like going in to see people. And then the strikes were sticky, and we're still kind of finding our way around them. AI, some things in voiceover can be replaced that way. I can see how it could be getting away with, but it'll never truly replace an organic human reaction to something. And you can't replicate that. You can get close, and I've heard plenty of commercials or small things that squeaked by with it, but I'm also trained to hear that. An average person may not notice that. But I think there was some show that dropped a couple months ago, and the whole cast was AI. And it just crashed and burned. People were so confused. The inflections were off. Everything sounded disingenuine. And I hope it doesn't get better, because then what are we doing? But people want to hear real people. They want to see real people. That's the connection we all seek out. Robots can't do that. And I'm not sure what happened that got us to this point, but I think it's because they took arts out of schools and they focused on STEM.
Yeah.
And now no one knows how to really let themselves play anymore. It's all technology.
Yeah, I do hope that won't take over. And you remember, the strike was not really us saying AI can't exist. It was really saying you can't use us to train AI, and you can't steal our voices. I mean, AI is its own technology, and people are going to use it, and I don't think we're going to be able to say you can't use it. But you can't steal my voice and put it in 5 shows and not get my permission and not pay me. And you can't use my voice to train it, so it learns to act like all of us. And they can shift. We'll take your voice, your acting style, we'll take this dialect and throw it on there. That's what we don't want to happen. If you can make it on your own, we'll see what the public says. So far, the tech is not good enough, and people are not enjoying
but it's better than it was a year ago.
No, it's going to get better, unfortunately. But that's what the strike was about. Don't take our voices. Don't steal from us.
I don't want someone to create an AI version of my voice and say something very mean or very hurtful or discriminatory because they think it's funny to hear this character speak like that. That's never okay. And there's one actor who has a particular character that AI was able to replicate his voice pretty well, and they would goof around, but I hated hearing that because what if someone was like, he said this, like, I never said that, we have the proof, like, but you don't. It's just like the deep fakes, like it's about honesty of what did a person say or do, and people can be tricked really easily.
And that's very common, too.
It's very common.
On the internet, there's a lot of versions of things I haven't done that are, they're not companies that are doing it. They're individuals who pay $5 for some kind of an app, and then they copy my voice, and they create, content using, my voice as best. And it's pretty good. There's keys where the acting's wrong, and then sometimes there's a dialect for 2 words, and there's not a dialect for other words. But it's there, and there's nothing at this point we can do about it. But as far as recording the different locations, remote is for me my least favorite. It is just, as you mentioned, a matter of convenience, and that's it. I think ensemble is the best, but I also do less of that. But the shows that I've had that were ensemble are some of my favorite, favorite experiences. There's nothing like that energy. Yeah. Although I will say, if you're dubbing something, the isolation of you being in studio, having the director, the engineer, whatever, writers and stuff, but focusing just on your character, there's something about that too. You don't have the other energies, just depending on what you're recording.
Yeah. If dubbing exists, like it's already existing, and you're adding to the sandwich. But if it's a prelay, like the animation hasn't even started, you get to make the ingredients of that sandwich first. There's more freedom in that.
Absolutely.
And again, pros and cons to both worlds.
My biggest beef with getting away from ensemble recording, I'm sure you all know, we're talking about when all the actors are in the studio at the same time, actually, reading the lines as they come up, instead of one actor at a time. And I have no idea why they started. It's never been explained to me by the producers why that's better for them to bring one person in, do all of his lines, and then bring another person in and do all of it, and then they edit them together. That's stupid to me. For one thing, acting is really, you think about it, reacting to other people, reacting to what they say, and if it's video, of course, reacting to what they do. But especially in voice acting, people can't see your facial expressions. They can't see your, if you're doing this or you're doing this. And but I think I miss that. I miss the camaraderie, like you guys said, of being in the studio at the same time. But the real thing that bothers me when you do just one person at a time, you get no good outtakes. You know what I'm talking about? I'm sure some of you heard the Thundercats outtakes on the internet.
Larry, what's a thermoflange?
What the F is a samoflange? That's one of them, right? There was one time, in case you don't know, you can go on the internet and Google or whatever your search engine is, Thundercats outtakes or Silverhawks outtakes. Probably didn't show them now. You get them for that. But the outtakes are the things that went onto the tape but will never be on the air for various reasons, usually language, But some of them are just little mistakes. Like one time I was going, thunder, thunder, thunder. Damn, I started too high. So that's what you hear on the internet. So that's my big beef with them. No more outtakes.
You can get away with it a little bit with dubbing, in the sense that depending on the project, if I'm coming in before another actor, but I have a scene with their character and my character, if I drop something funny that fits in the space, as well as doing the line the way it's supposed to be read, then when they come in 2 days, the engineer will sometimes lead them in with my take, which is going to clearly bust them up before they can actually get the line out properly. And then you get a very fun interaction because they can't get their line out right because of what I led them in with. It's not quite the same, but we do have a little fun with it sometimes.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think for us, I'm a New York actor. I live out here and work out here. And, of course, you guys are probably L.A. actors?
L.A. for me,
yeah. One of the main differences, I think, for us in New York is that given the kind of city New York is, close, you know, people in the streets all the time. You see your fellow actors on the street stand there for a half an hour talking about what gigs you got and bragging about the next one. And so we're used to being around everybody. And in L.A., I know it's more because I have a daughter who lives in L.A. and is an actress. Carrie Kenny Silver, anybody know who she is? Thank you. Four Seasons, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and back in the day, the State, Reno 911.
Yeah.
Right.
She was Trudy Weigel, the tall, thin girl with black back hair. That was her. Now I've forgotten my point entirely. I miss in New York when I'm on my way to an audition or a recording session, not seeing other actors on almost every street corner. Because in New York, it used to be all the recording studios and the advertising agencies were in Midtown. They were from like 32nd Street to 57th Street. From Broadway to 3rd Avenue. That's where everything was. Now you have to go way down to the tip of the island, and sometimes in New Jersey, So you don't get a chance to see anybody and talk with them. You might see another actor briefly as you're leaving after doing your part. He's coming into the studio. That's about it. No time to hang out. That's what I miss. Yeah.
Well, I love that about New York because it's a walking city.
Yes.
It's designed to be that way.
It
it's
used to
super,
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And LA is so car focused.
Oh, sure.
So, if you're lucky, you'll see each other in passing when you're out of the car. But so much of your travel is isolated in that way. And I lived in New York for a hot second, and I would pass, even if I didn't know them, I recognized several people each day on the way to a class or on the way to a show, like, oh, this must be their route. And it was so easy to kind of pick them out just because it was a community in that way, even if you didn't know each other. And that's I think the only city in the country that's like that. And more of that. I like that simplicity, at least in the past. I don't
Very
know what
nice.
it's like these days.
So thank you for your question. That was awesome.
I also want to add on to the AI question is that
Actually, there's someone who's been waiting behind you. You can ask another question, but please let a few other people get in first. That'd be
Hello,
very kind
my
of you.
name is Waka. I'm from Stratford, Connecticut.
Awesome.
I have a question for Keith Silverstein. Keith, how many voices did you do in animation?
How many voices have I done in animation?
Yes.
400?
I don't know. I have no idea. There's a few sites that kind of log that stuff, but they never have everything for any of us anyway. They do the best that they can.
Yeah.
So probably whatever it says on behind the voice actors, and then add 100 or something like that. And that would go probably for everybody at least. You know
Or
what I mean?
IMDb.
Or IMDb, same thing. Take that. IMDb has a good chunk of them.
Usually
up
it'll
there.
say, it'll list the number of projects, and then it will say how many episodes you're in.
Right.
Or how many characters you're listed. There's math involved, but
Yeah, but if you just mean
there's-
for different gigs and different characers, and
additional
hundreds.
voices.
Yeah, additional voices. I was going to say,
additional.
there's additional voices, so who knows how many side characters
Right.
you've done.
I was
Yeah.
the lady on the street who tripped over the beer bottle.
I love
was,
that.
I know, and
That
she
was my
screams
favorite.
falling down. I
Yes.
submitted myself for an Annie on that.
It's always been the case in the shows I've done, Thundercats and Silver Hawks, that each actor, there were only 5 of us in the cast for 130 episodes, and every voice you hear on those shows is one of us. So we probably did 50 voices on
Yeah.
Thundercats.
To get us
and-
to
But most of them were one guy had one line. What do you mean by that? And he's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even the major characters, like
So,
we each played one. We Thundercats people played. They wanted us to audition for one Thundercat, and one mutant. That's the bad guy. But then beyond that, once you start making new episodes and they come up with new characters and new situations, then we just kind of, the director would say, let me hear what you would do with that, Larry. Bob, let me hear you do that. And then she would just say, let's go with Bob.
Yeah.
Every time.
Bob.
Though from what I understand,
So Keith,
Yeah.
what's your favorite character you play on television?
Well, here's what I say, because you can have favorites for lots of different reasons if you're being really honest. So I don't have one favorite. I would always say my favorite character is my next character, because my next character, whoever that is, means I still have a career. But I have lots of favorites. You know what I mean? Like which one helped my career the most? Which one did I meet a great director that I continued to work with? Which was the cast that, it was so fun to work with this cast. They were amazing. Which one was the most challenging? Is that my favorite? What was the most fun or zany or something I'd always wanted to do or my favorite franchise? So it's hard to have a one favorite. I know a lot of fans want to know their one character. That your favorite is mine.
Well, anyway, I like Looney Tunes.
I love Looney Tunes. You can't beat Looney Tunes. I can tell you my favorite Looney Tunes character that's nothing to do with me is Daffy Duck. Daffy's always been my favorite.
Hey Keith, did you know that Daffy debuted in the cartoon Porky's Duck Hunt?
Say it one more time.
Did you know that Daffy Duck debuted in Porky's Duck Hunt?
I heard Porky. I heard
Porky's Duck Hunt.
Porky's Duck Hunt.
I think that was Daffy's first cartoon.
Was that his first one?
I think so.
really?
Well, I'm sure I've seen every Daffy. I mean, I feel like I've seen every one of those cartoons. He was always my favorite. I like old school Daffy when he was actually Daffy. I know there was a point where the writing changed and he was...
Clampett Daffy, there's a Fritz Freeling
Yes.
Daffy. Like, Daffy changes with
He
your
changes
character,
a lot.
as does Bugs.
But more recently, he's
very
a little more
Clampett.
conceited and...
It's very Clampett style these days.
The Space Jam one is
Space
not my
Jam.
favorite. No, that Daffy and that Bugs
Wait,
are
which
not
one?
my...
Which one?
Well, first one, and I don't think I saw the
We
first
are
one.
not friends.
No.
That is my favorite movie of all time.
Well, it's
Fight.
Bugs and Daffy.
It's Billy West
Fight.
and D. Bradley
Fight.
Baker, who were hired for their comedy skills, not if Keith liked them.
No, well, listen, let me be clear. I'm not judging the voiceover or anything. It has nothing to do with the voice. It has nothing to do with that. I feel like the writers, at one point, they grabbed onto Daffy was a little bit conceited and greedy, but that was only a part of his character. He was mainly Daffy and goofy and all that stuff. And there was a point where they leaned only on that. There was a point where Bugs didn't say this means war and wasn't kind of jerky to anyone until he was pushed. And then there became a point for a while where he just stayed kind of perfect and nothing went wrong and he always messed with other people.
Of course you
That's what I
realize
mean.
this made war.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was earned when it got to that point. And I loved it when it came up. Not that he started that way.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Not the actors. They're great.
Damn straight.
Of course.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job, buddy.
you.
All right. So we've been talking about classic cartoons and Looney Tunes.
Space Jam, yeah.
Space Jam. Looney Tunes back in action. Any fans of that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's so good.
The Day the Earth Blew Up with Daffy and Porky.
Everyone
back in
loves
action,
that.
it was Joe Alaskis and Brendan
That
Fraser.
too. But I suppose my question is, what are your thoughts on the live-action Dudley Do-Right movie with Brendan Fraser and Sarah Jessica Parker?
Which one? Say it again.
Live action Dudley Do-Right? Is it
Yeah.
already out? Did it?
It came out in the
That
90s.
came out in the 90s.
I don't
The
think I
George
saw
of the
it.
Jungle was phenomenal. And the Dudley Do-Right, I think it's that same universe, the same style.
Yep.
But, unfortunately, a lot of people will hold a companion movie in that universe up to the first one since it sets such a good standard. So it's like they're comparing Brendan against himself, which isn't fair. It's a completely different character. But I remember watching it and laughing a lot. I haven't seen it in a while, and I might have watched George of the Jungle a little more often because reasons. But, I love anything Brendan Fraser.
Shirtless reasons?
Sweaty jungle, long hair. What is it with chicks and horses? Yeah, that's what it was. But just any type, he's so good at that slapstick comedy. He fits in that world. And that's why Back in Action was so good too. And I'm so happy he's back doing movies again.
I think we're all happy about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And put him in another comedy movie. Put me in it too. Why not?
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Unfortunately, we have time for one more question.
Wow.
Speed round.
So make it really good, no pressure.
You got it. Hi, I'm Dan from Hudson Valley. Nice to see you.
Hi.
My question is, you guys have been voice acting for ages. You've inspired so many people to get into acting because voice acting is acting, right? So I was just wondering, was there ever a character that inspired, or a performance that inspired you when you were younger? Was acting always what you wanted when you were in your heart when you were younger?
Tress MacNeille in Animaniacs, because she did so many voices, and I didn't realize it was all her. And then, as I got a little older, it's like, oh, she was Babs Bunny, and she did all those impressions too. So she could change her voice and manipulate it in any way. So I would just quote her all the time. She and Maurice LaMarche are my basis of what is comedy, what is voiceover.
That's great. Maybe it's always been just a whole. I mean, whenever I do an ensemble record, there's no one in the room that doesn't inspire me and impress me because we all bring something a little bit different. That somebody can be the greenest person, meaning the newest person in that group, and there's still something about their energy that I go, oh yeah, that's a choice I haven't made in a while, but it's a totally valid choice. So I'm honestly, I cannot watch somebody act, and in anything. I can be watching a play or something and just be sitting in the audience and I'm blown away and inspired. And that lasts however many days it lasts where I'm just like, ooh, I've got to be better. I like some of those ideas, some of those things I saw. So I'm very impressionable that way. So I loved lots of specific characters, but there wasn't any one. I have used other actors as a basis for a character. You know what I mean? I used to watch a show called Dr. Shrinker, which was, what was that, the Croft Superstars Hour. Then the guy, I don't know who the villain, Dr. Shrinker, who the actor was, but he had this way of speaking that was a little bit over the top. And I used that for a Monster High film, and I based my character off of that vibe. And I just pull from things that are somewhere in the back of my memory. So, yeah.
What was the question?
The question was...
I needed a nap. I'm sorry.
No, the question was, is there a voice or performance that inspired you to get into acting, or was it always something that you kind of felt in your heart?
Not any particular voice, but particular actors. Of course, Mel Blanc. Yeah, of course. He was the king. Dawes Butler.
Our Butler. Dawes Butler.
Dawes Butler, yeah. And
Don Messick.
June Foray.
June Foray.
And those are the people I really liked. This just occurred to me because, you do Minnie Mouse, and I never did any Disney work. But and sometimes people on the con will say, what character would you like to have played, but you never had the chance?
Oh, Duchess, darling, from the Aristocats. I just love Eva Gabor.
Well, I'll tell you who I like to play.
Oh, you're very talented. I like that a lot.
Thanks. Goofy from the Disney.
All right, Keith, now it is your turn.
Of what character that I would love to play?
Oh, yes, of course.
Oh, I'm going to give the weird, who would I love to
We
play?
can just skip you if that's...
No.
Okay.
Well, here's my thing. My favorite characters are the ones that are, in the end, like I'd love to play someone like the Joker's a great character to play. Like everybody wants to play the Joker. And I do. But, Hamill's always going to be like the GOAT, right? And I agree with that 100%. So for me, it's the characters that don't exist yet. So like Tom Kenny is SpongeBob SquarePants. There's no debating that. But that didn't exist before Tom. So those are my favorites. Are the ones that you get to originate that become you associate it only with you. So the ideals are the ones that aren't created yet. And every once in a while we get to play some of those characters. And those to me are my favorites. So I can't name them.
Yeah.
I can't. Most actors, I think. Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I've always loved to play the bad guys because you get to really emote. You get to, as we call it, chew the scenery.
Yes,
you get to overact. Whereas if you're just a regular character, you're supposed to sound just like a regular person. But if you're Mum Ra or somebody, you're Mum Ra.
Yeah.
Ancient spirits of evil, transform this thing.
That was Earl Hammond who did that voice. And the funniest thing was, when you're watching Thundercats and Mum Ra's doing that transformation into a, everlasting evil guy. If you notice, Mum Ra always has this green bile coming out of it. It's part of the character. It's evil. This green stuff. Well, Earl Hammond, when he was doing that particular part of the character, would actually start spitting and drooling. Not on purpose, but it was just, ancient spirits of evil. And the spit would fly. So we always, we'd find ourselves backing away from the microphone. And I would
hand with a napkin.
When I didn't have a line for a little while, I would go to the next page. I'll say, Earl's going to do the spitting thing in about
step back.
Page and a half. And we'd all start backing out.
When people have said, if you could be any character, who would you be? And none. Because if I love a character so much, if you could, would you be Dot from Animaniacs? Like, no, because then I wouldn't be the same Dot. And we love Dot because it's that person.
Yeah.
So I never, there's no answer to that question because we love them so much because it was that person. And any character I would want to do that already existed, it would be like a legacy role. Like if it's like, okay, a new voice is needed for whatever reason, the opportunity is wonderful. But if we can get the original cast for any type of reboot or remake, get the original. That's why they were so good in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you guys are all originals to us. We love your characters. Everyone, please, big round of applause. Caitlin, Keith, Larry, visit them at their tables. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with us.
And to those who still have the questions, come by and talk to us. We'll answer. I'll make Keith answer.
Sure.
We're next to each other.
We're right by
He's
each other,
always
yeah.
staring like,
Can we eat now?
I think so. Thanks for coming by, you guys.
yeah.